Improve your health, finances, and style. LifeBeat, a radio magazine, brought to you by the One Joshua Group, building capacity and expanding resources.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us for LifeBeat, the One Joshua Group production, and our guest today is Dr. James E.K. Hildreth, 12th President of Meharry Medical College. Welcome, Dr. Hildreth.
Thank you for having me.
As the 12th President of Meharry Medical College, tell us what you envision as being, if you would like for Meharry Medical College to move forward in your long-standing role of providing primary care providers to our country.
Well, we have a vision that we've laid out for 2026, which is our sesquicentennial year. And two of our five main goals is, one, to expand the number of diverse healthcare providers that we train, and number two is to expand our reach. And both of those things are relevant to the question that you just asked. Since 1876, Meharry has been a place where people of color could come to become healthcare providers. And for a long time in this country, Meharry and Howard were the only two places that you could go to become a physician or a dentist. So we are proud of that heritage and that legacy, and we intend to expand on it by both increasing our class size, but also offering new programs. For example, we're about to launch a PA program, Physician Assistance Program. Mm-hmm. And your audience may not know that that's one of the least diverse of all the healthcare professions. As a matter of fact, only 0.3% of PAs are black males, and that's an astonishingly low number. And so we'd like to contribute to diversifying that field, and we're going to start our own PA program.
Okay. So you mentioned two areas that we'd like to discuss a little further in this next short term.
Sure.
You mentioned black males.
Mm-hmm.
There is a noted decrease in black males, black men,
Yes.
in medical school. Why?
Well, it's primarily a pipeline issue. In other words, black men cannot enroll in medical school if they're not graduating from college, and they cannot graduate from college if they're not graduating from high school. So this is a problem that goes really back to the formative years of young boys, black boys especially, when they have to be engaged in and engaged by something that leads them to want to be a physician. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the things that would help a lot would just be having more black men teach in K through 12, because they would actually see an authority figure, somebody to respect who looks like them. Mm-hmm. But there are other issues as well. One of them is implicit bias. Mm-hmm. We can't get around the fact that in all aspects of American society, implicit bias plays a role, and one of the most obvious of those, and you don't like to talk about these things, but just the fact that black men are targeted specifically by law enforcement officials is one example of the implicit bias that also is a factor in why they don't get into medical school and dental school and professional schools in larger numbers. But it really comes down to an issue of you can't enroll them in medical school if they're not graduating from college, and you can't graduate from college unless you go to high school. So it's a pipeline issue, but there are also societal issues that contribute to this. Mm-hmm.
Well, as you know, we've been involved in this discussion in the last couple of years in a program that is called Empower, and it's been led by the four HBCU medical schools: Meharry Medical College, Morehouse School of Medicine, Howard University, and Charles Drew. And it becomes a challenge in engaging at the undergraduate level to discuss and discover what some of these potential pipeline problems are. Dr. Hildreth, do you think that we fully recognize that there is a problem, or are there so many other challenges that HBCUs face that this may not be primary for their interest?
I do think there's not full acceptance of the data. There's actual data to show that there's a significant problem when it comes to African Americans who graduate from HBCUs and their success in getting into professional schools. Whether we want to admit it or not, accept it or not, that's an issue. Mm-hmm. And I do accede to the fact that HBCUs are being beset on many levels and in many ways, and this is just one of those. But I also believe that we have to take ownership of these problems and find our own solutions rather than having them imposed on us. And that's kind of the approach that we are taking. And we are, Meharry Medical College is, I know that Morehouse School of Medicine is, with Dr. Montgomery Rice and the other medical schools. We're trying to do our best to partner with the undergraduate schools to make the students better prepared, and that's been our approach, as you know.
So my notes here tell me that you are an esteemed researcher, that you are an academic leader, and that you an all-around good guy. So, we all start from somewhere to get to where we are.
Yes.
So you were a Rhodes Scholar?
Yes.
Do you know there's so many people have no idea which road is that, Dr. Hildreth?
Well, I come from a small town in Arkansas, and when I was 11 years old, my father died, and as best I could tell as an 11-year-old, even though there were hospitals and doctors, my dad did not get the care that I thought he should get. And so that was my initial interest in becoming a physician. And then I discovered that I loved science and engineering and all those things, so it seemed a natural fit. And I had the good fortune of being able to go to Harvard and then Oxford and back to Johns Hopkins. So I've had the privilege of going to some of the best universities in the world, but it was all driven by that life-altering event when I was 11 years old that sent me on this journey that I've been on ever since.
Now there are some key words here: pipeline,
Yes.
people who mentor and encourage you,
Yes.
and you've talked about both of these.
Yes.
Are those two elements that we perhaps can improve in our HBCU sphere to help change the trajectory of those students who are not making it out of high school? And I certainly agree with you. They're not getting out of the 10th grade. And we're losing a lot of our students, particularly our black male students in the 10th grade.
Sure.
What can we do within our own communities, both academic and at the community level where people live, work, and play, to encourage those individuals, both male and female, so that they're better students, so that they can have better academic outcomes, and most of all, how we can utilize and stimulate their interest to improve the overall health and well-being of our communities?
Well, it's a really challenging question and issue, but one of the things I think is really important is people have to have hope that if they put the work in, if they do the right things and make the right decisions, that they'll have the opportunity to do the things that they see others doing. So, but when you've lost hope, when you don't see any evidence that there could be hope, it's a really challenging thing to get young people engaged in anything. So I think we have to find a way that in the context of all this happening, and clearly this is a really challenging time in this country to be brown or black, we have to find a way as a community to wrap our arms around our young people and give them that hope that they need to overcome the challenges. That was represented to me by my mother, who would not let the negative messages and the stereotypes and all that penetrate my being. She was my shield. She shielded me from it. There was actually a song by Sweet Honey and the Rock called "There Were No Mirrors in My Nana's House." And to me, that's what my mother did. She took down all the mirrors, so it wasn't reflected on me, all the negativity that society might have had. So I think we have to find a way to give young people hope again, and actually free them up to be kids, because some of them they don't get a chance to explore themselves or the world around them, and I think we just need to find a way to restore that. And I know it's not easy, but that's kind of what I think.
In our series around this communities of practice here at Meharry Medical College, we've looked at some of the vulnerable populations. And earlier, and our listening audience and our viewing audience would be able to see these in many of our upcoming sections. We've spoken with Dr. Reuben Warren.
Yes.
At Tuskegee University. We've spoken with someone you know very well, Dr. Reverend Edwin Sanders.
Yes.
And then now to have the conversation with you, and as I sit here and look at you and listen to what you say and rethink what the three of you have said, each of you has talked about the need and the message for hope. Why do you believe that we are losing, or that the hope is not as prevalent as it has been to help push you through to where you are?
Well, that also is, I think, a complex issue, but I think part of the answer is, in the context of my own life, my mother wanted so badly for her 7 children to have a life that was less challenging and full of more hope and joy than hers has been. So she pushed us, not in a mean way or a mean-spirited way, but she would not settle for anything less than our best. And even when, there's very little in the house in terms of money or food or whatever else, we didn't actually know that we were. You know what I mean?
I think we've all been there.
The environment was such that you didn't really know, because it was
You
just
didn't know you didn't have it.
Yeah, exactly.
You
So,
didn't know you didn't have it.
but I think that there's a loss of a sense of delayed gratification among some of our young people. They don't actually know that there's not instant gratification, or they believe that there is, but there actually isn't. And life is challenging, and part of being successful is learning how to deal with failure and learning from those failures and being more successful in the other things that you do. And so one of the things that I've tried to impart to the people that I have a chance to mentor or lead or teach is just that failure is a part of life and of even being successful. I dare you to find anybody who's achieved anything great in this world who won't tell you that there were some setbacks and that they learned from them.
So you've talked about levels of achievement. You mentioned earlier in our discussion the numbers of physicians' assistants who are people of color, of African Americans, but also in bearing that weight that Meharry Medical College has shared. Tell us about the numbers, the statistical information around dentists and the preparation of dentists by Meharry Medical College.
Well, there are about 200,000 dentists who are licensed to practice in the United States. Only about 6,000 of them are black. And that's only 3% of the total, which is far less than it should be. But if you look at those 6,000 dentists who are black who practice, one school in Nashville, Tennessee is responsible for 42% of them.
That's awesome.
So that 4 out of 10 black dentists who practice in the United States were trained at Meharry Medical College. And that's what I mean, that we are boxing above our weight class, because if you took Meharry out of the picture, the diversity of the workforce going back many decades would be very different. And there's no getting around the fact that most people would rather be cared for by somebody who they can relate to. So if you're a black male, you probably would feel more comfortable being cared for, at least in some instances, by another black male. I know this is true for a lot of women. They much prefer to be taken care of by, and that makes sense. So as the population of the United States evolves, changes, ages, and all this, there's a need to make sure that the healthcare workforce reflects that. And at the rate we're going, there's a gap that's being created between what the providers look like and what the population looks like.
Good.
And we're trying our best to help to change that.
So that leads us into one of my last question is, we ask all of our guests to leave our viewing and listening audience with what you would like for your message of the day to be. So Dr. James Hildreth, tell us what you would like for your message of the day to be today to our viewing and listening audience.
I would like people to understand the power of one. What do I mean by that? That one person at the right place at the right time who can muster the courage to do so can drastically change the course of not only their own lives, but the lives of many others. And just to give you one example, this has been on my heart for a while. Dr. Levi Watkins was the first black physician faculty at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. And when they asked him to be on the admissions committee, he began to ask questions about why there are no black students being admitted to the medical school. The answer was because we can't find any. Dr. Watkins took it upon himself to go out and find all the black students who had scored above a certain level on the MCAT. He wrote them all a personal letter, including me. I was not going to apply to Johns Hopkins had I not gotten a letter from Levi Watkins. And prior to that time, they had never admitted more than one student, probably over a 7 or 8 year period. That year, because of Levi's letter, 18 students out of 120 who matriculated at Meharry at Johns Hopkins were black.
Wow.
But if Levi Watkins had not done what he did by having the courage to challenge the status quo, who knows what the diversity would look like, not just at Johns Hopkins, but overall. I just want people to know that one person in the right place at the right time who can muster the courage to do so can change the world for themselves and for many others. So that's my message, the power of one.
Sounds like a good man. I'm Kermit Payne, and thank you for joining us with LifeBeats, a radio magazine, a production of One Joshua Group. And thank you, Dr. Hildreth, for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.